What do you think is the worst thing that can happen to an anime fan? A show getting delayed? Never getting a second season of your favorite anime? Blue Lock Season 2? But for me, the worst thing that can happen to an anime fan ever is to see a horrendous adaptation of a great series. I mean, Tokyo Ghoul, Uzumaki, Berserk 2016, the freaking nightmares never end. And it looks like we'll be adding yet another one to this list very soon. But why am I talking about this in the first place? Let me give you a little bit of context. Now, in the isekai genre, we already have Re:Zero and Mushoku Tensei. They are the big two, I guess. And we all know that it's literally illegal at this point to have less than 3 anime and call it the best in the genre. Also, it's been quite some time since the anime community has been rattled by a single isekai show. I mean, Re:Zero was released 8 years ago and even Mushoku Tensei is 3 years old. Wow, now I feel old. So just when things were looking dull for the isekai fandom, the news came that the beginning after the end was getting an anime adaptation. This really blew away the minds of every guy who has read the manhwa of the series. I mean, why wouldn't it? It's genuinely awesome. The fans had every reason to be excited. But then the behind-the-scenes news started to drop, and as things turned out, the people are now just waiting for the show to become just another failed adaptation that will soon be forgotten by the community. Before we talk about all that spicy stuff, however, let's start from the basics. And spoiler warning for the folks who haven't read the manhwa, as well as for those who have only read the manhwa, because I'll be talking about some stuff from the novel as well. So the story starts off almost identical to Mushoku Tensei. There is no way you can disagree with that. And personally for me, it was probably the most underwhelming part of the story. I mean, it wasn't bad. It just felt like watching a pure ripoff of Rudius' new life. But that certainly doesn't last for long, because the story quickly takes a U-turn and steps into its own territory. And it pretty much laid the groundwork for the U-turn at the very start of the series. Because here the main character, Arthur, aka Gray, wasn't a shut-in weeb like Rudius, but an actual king of a futuristic world. And the dude wasn't a king because he was born into the royal family, no. The world he used to live in was run by the strongest, ruthless soldiers. So this guy was basically the best assassin in the world. So what happens when you make a guy like that get reborn into a fantasy world? Well, you literally get a 4-year-old kid killing machine killing mercenaries in the most brutal ways possible. Like, it's his homework from school. Even though they seem the same, the characters somehow feel totally different from Mushoku Tensei. And the more the story progresses, the more you understand what the show is really about. It isn't just an isekai for the sake of being an isekai. Each and everything that happens in the series has a purpose. So for once, the previous life of the main character has a part to play in the story's grander scale. Every character feels important to the story, and they are not the only ones to ill the main character's story. But almost every one of them has their own set of motives and goals, for which they will do anything. So when the story slowly unfolds, you realize that the plot was never about Arthur, but it was actually about this new world that will execute each and every chance it gets to remove Arthur from the overall equation. And things get even more evident when you put it on paper. Because in a world where you have beings that almost surpass the power level of almost every other fantasy character you've seen, you have a dude who is literally an insect compared to them, and yes, he's called to be a prodigy, who grows his power faster than Nami's you-know-what in One Piece. But after Arthur properly meets the Asuras, you realize that all those badass overpowered moments meant nothing in the end. Because these knuckleheads can kill him without even breaking a sweat. And that's where I really think the beginning after the end outshines most of its competitors. This series does a ridiculously good job of building its fantasy world. It somehow manages to explain each and every single thing about the world and its political affairs without dumping 200-word paragraphs on the readers. Shows like Re:Zero never really tried to focus on its world and rather decided to focus on Amelia's the characters. But that's not a bad thing, because as long as you develop your characters properly, the world will automatically be a lot easier to expand. So basically you don't need to waste hours explaining the political state of the world, where you can just introduce characters that literally embody the current situation of the world. But instead of relying on that, the beginning after the end keeps on explaining its world, alongside its characters. And for those who are having a hard time understanding what I'm saying, let's understand it with an example. Let's take Attack on Titan as a prime example. So just after explaining and revealing the other side of the sea, they literally just take you there. So it allows you to keep on learning about that side of the world with the story of the individual stories of each character. Similarly in the manhwa, when Tessia's grandfather introduces the concept of deities, we are literally soon introduced to them in a manner of a few chapters. So to wrap all up what I've said till now, in a short summary, the beginning after the end may seem just like another generic isekai in the first few chapters, But the more you get deeper into the story, the more you realize that it's probably the best fantasy story you've read in a long time. The characters are great. They are deeply flawed, but they only make it more realistic and easier to connect to. The world building is phenomenal and probably the best one you'll see in a fantasy genre, almost in a tie with shows like Frieren. So me personally, and I'm sure many of you as well, have been waiting for so long to just talk about this series. And all I can say is that if you are one of those who actually read the manhwa and are sleeping on this, you are seriously missing out from experiencing peak storytelling. So do me a favor and read this. And as for the people who are waiting for the upcoming anime adaptation of the show, you've got a lot to be worried about. So just after the release of Solo Leveling, there are rumors roaming around the internet about the beginning after the end getting an anime adaptation as well. In the latter half of 2024, it was finally announced that the adaptation was actually in progress. So for every manhwa reader, it was like they were hearing the trumpets of heaven. It was like anime fans hearing about Attack on Titan, or even Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood getting an anime adaptation back in the day. Just think of all the hope and expectations you'd have knowing what the original source material is like and how much potential that it carries being animated. But unfortunately, on today's date, things aren't looking too great. Because just after the anime was officially announced, the studio that will be handling it was also announced. And it was Studio ACAT. And even if for some godforsaken reason you have heard about this studio, you can't argue the fact that they probably are not the best to adapt a manhwa of this caliber. And one of the biggest reasons for that is the fact that most of the animes produced by these studios have not really accomplished anything. Every show has been a flop and completely ignored by the general mass. I mean, when did you hear about an anime called LBX Girls or I've somehow gotten stronger when I've improved my farm-related skills? Exactly, you haven't heard of them. Although the studio is new to producing anime, it's undeniable that you won't be getting something like Solo Leveling and Mushoku Tensei from their hands. But there may still be some hope, because the director for the adaptation is the one who also directed Data Live. And as for the character designs, they are being made by the folks who worked in shows like the Fate series and Rising of the Shield Hero. And from the teaser we got recently, the characters and cinematography do look pretty great, and the original author is heavily involved with the story. So that reduces the chances of us getting another Tokyo Ghoul. But still, the decision of what kind of anime we will be getting still rests in the hands of the studio. So just keep your hopes limited to the ground. And here, also mentioning the recent teaser trailer that dropped, there wasn't much to see in it, but I still noticed something not so pleasant. So first of all, apart from the sword fight between King Gray and some random dude in the last mask scene, almost every other scene in the teaser was still frames with no movements, and that's kind of a big red flag for an anime to have. And the other thing I would like to say is that I'm really skeptical about the color grading of the anime. They are making the scenes look pretty intense and dramatic, and I'm cool with that. But when you look at the manhwa, the colors are really vibrant and light, almost creating a fun vibe. And it slowly gets darker when the plot becomes more brutal and intense. In fact, the colors that we can see in the recent chapters of the war arcs are almost similar to the teaser. And for those who haven't read the manhwa, comparing the war arc to the initial chapters of the series is like comparing Attack on Titan to My Dress Up Darling. So you can kind of see my concern. In the end, everything I said till now was all just nitpicking and just assuming that the anime would be mid. However, that is probably not the case. All we got till now is just a teaser, with only 30 seconds of visuals. So judging the whole anime just based on that isn't fair. It'd be like judging a book purely by its cover. So maybe this will actually live up to the manhwa. Maybe the studio will pull off a miracle and will capture the true vibes and essence of the series. Overall, on a pure personal standard, I am a skeptic. But that doesn't mean you should be. Stranger things have happened, and I really wish that only this show got the treatment Solo Leveling and Mushoku Tensei did. Again, not trying to be negative. But hey, maybe I'll be surprised. And with that, that's today's video, folks. If you were able to listen this far, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and press on that bell icon, and set us all to be notified about all our latest new videos. And let us know in the comments down below about an anime that you are skeptical about, or one that you're super excited for, as we love all things anime. But anywho, as for now, I'll catch you later. See you in the next one.